Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Three High Safeties. This is the Fantasy Football edition. I am Kevin Cole. I'm joined as always by Ian Hartitz and Andrew Erickson. Ian, I'm going to come to you first on this one. It's Jameis time. Some people have been clamoring for it for a while. Not me, but some other people have been clamoring for it a while. Drew Brees is old. Drew Brees is done. We need Jameis time. He definitely brings some fun and excitement, but do you want to actually put him in his first start? We assume his first start. We never know. Taysom could up that snap count from like 4 to 8 or something like that. In his first start this week against a pretty friendly Falcons defense. What do you think?
I think Jameis Winston makes football better unless he's the starting quarterback for your favorite team. Then, you guys start wondering about if you really want this guy as a real-life option. But to your point, he is one of the more fun, entertaining quarterbacks in the league. I am not sure if we are getting that same, DGAF, YOLO ball gunslinger, though. In New Orleans, we have such a small sample size. I don't want to put too much into this. But at the same time, his average target depth last week was 5.1 yards. He had never had a game under 7.6 in his entire career with the Buccaneers. So, I do think we'll see him throw downfield with a little more frequency, but we saw this with Teddy Bridgewater last year. Like he's, we called him Teddy check down, all this, made fun of him, always checking the ball down. Now he's airing it out more in Carolina. So I don't think they're going to, overhaul this offense to try to fit Jameis's talents all that much. Okay, they'll throw downfield a little bit more than they did with Brees, but I don't think we're going to be getting the same, YOLO ball guy that's willing to throw downfield all the time. And two, we don't have the same sort of just chance for just constant turnovers that kind of created all those fantasy-friendly shootouts in Tampa Bay last year. So even though, Jameis was under center for 32 of 35 second-half snaps, he'll be the quarterback, but I do think we see more of a run-first approach, more Taysom Hill than any of us feel comfortable with, and I just don't know that if this version of Jameis Winston is going to be the same sort of fantasy-friendly guy that we saw in the past. So I have him as QB19. It is a good week, to start him against the Falcons defense. Certainly don't have anything too nice to say about them, but, I would keep expectations in check for the 2020 version of Jameis.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other side of it. I want to embrace the variance that is Jameis Winston at the quarterback position. Again, the matchup is there, like Ian mentioned, the Falcons defense. I mean, this is it. If you can't start Jameis Winston against the Falcons, then, why would you pick him up at all? I mean, this is a matchup that he should be able to expose. We've seen him do it against this defense for years and years. He seems like throws for multiple touchdowns every single time. His last 4 games against the Atlanta Falcons, he's always ripped apart this defense. The last 3 quarterbacks that they have faced, last 3 out of 4 quarterbacks they have faced have thrown for at least 300 yards. And I mean, Nick Foles in one half scored 24 fantasy points against this Atlanta Falcons defense. So even if Taysom Hill is also working in, whether he's throwing attempts or doing whatnot, I mean, this is a pass funnel defense. The Falcons are one of the best run defense this year, second fewest rushing yards allowed per game. I don't know if the Saints are going to get the ball going on the ground. It's going to be dump offs to Kamara. So even if, he doesn't come out and be YOLOing, okay, dump off to Kamara. Hey, that's fantasy points for Jameis Winston. So I think Jameis Winston's a low-end quarterback one this week.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Ian on this one and say 2 quarterback leagues, yes. But it's I'm in a little bit more of a wait and see mode if you're talking about starting them this week. I mean, if you look at the slate, you just have a lot of pretty decent options. I mean, you're going to have guys like Roethlisberger's playing against the Jaguars, Derek Carr against the Chiefs. You even have someone like Matthew Stafford against the Panthers, Kirk Cousins against the Cowboys. There's just a lot of options where you could probably be a little bit more certain that you're not gonna lose the week with those quarterbacks there. And I think with Jameis, what we saw for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, he was pushing the ball downfield, but he also had Mike Evans to go downfield. He had Chris Godwin for a lot of that time there. He had O.J. Howard for a little bit who could stretch the field down there. I don't know who they're going to throw it to in the Saints offense. It's really get the ball out of your hands quickly, get it to Mike Thomas quickly, get it to Alvin Kamara quickly. If he can fit into that, but is there anyone who's really going to do that better than Drew Brees? When we saw Teddy Bridgewater as a very similar type of quarterback, and he played well. They won games with him, but they really won those games by running the ball and by playing good defense. He wasn't at the same level as Drew Brees was last year in terms of his quality of play. So it's going to be more of a wait and see for me because that defense is starting to come around this year. So a lot of times when Jameis was throwing these YOLO balls last time, that's because he threw previous YOLO balls, which led to pick sixes, which then required more YOLO balls. So I think the Saints are going to want to break that cycle this week.
How many times could 3 fantasy analysts say YOLO in 5 minutes? That's what we bring to you on 3 High Safeties. Guys, we have a great primetime matchup coming up Thursday. Finally, it seems like one week after another, we're just getting brutal teams squared off each other. But Cardinals, Seahawks, Thursday Night Football. I love it. You love it. Let's win some money playing DFS, though. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this awesome Thursday night DFS slate?
Yeah, so I'm going to leave the Seattle running backs to Kevin. So I'm going to let him handle that because he is the running back guru on these showdown slates. So I'll just go down at a pay down option. Again, not a sexy guy. Jacob Hollister, even though, hey, Hollister maybe he is a sexy guy. I don't know. But he led the tight end position in snaps and receiving yards against the Bills 2 weeks ago. And he got hurt last week. So he was actually starting to look like the leading tight end for the Seattle Seahawks. And he's a guy you can pay down to someone that you can save salary because you want to get in the studs. You want to get the Kyler Murrays, the Russell Wilsons, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett. Like, it's really hard to fit all those guys in without a pay down option. Jacob Hollister is kind of can fill that void for your roster because, he's averaged 4 catches the last 2 games against the Cardinals. And like I said, if he hadn't gotten hurt last week, he probably would have led the tight end position in snaps for the Seattle Seahawks. So I think he's a really good pay down option again. And then if Lockett is forced to miss, Freddie Swain kind of pops up. He's someone that's been operating out of the slot routinely. So I would assume that he would probably take on that role if Lockett is forced to miss.
Yeah, I don't think you can touch that Seattle backfield if you're talking about cash or something like that. If you're playing tournaments, Chris Carson may be in the mix. Carlos Hyde is going to be back. But then you have guys like Alex Collins, who kind of led the backfield last week, DJ Dallas. It's just all over the place. So I do think you could maybe choose one of those guys. Collins might be an interesting guy if people are pivoting off of him with some new healthy options there to say, this is my guy in tournaments. And then also I think Tyler Lockett and his health is going to be a huge thing for the slate. Because if you look at what happened last time with DK Metcalf, we saw against Jalen Ramsey, Russell Wilson was unwilling or unable to throw the ball to him. That happened to a degree against the Cardinals the last time they played too, where Lockett was just a target monster. So is Wilson going to do that again, or has he been hearing all this week about how he wasn't throwing enough to DK Metcalf? So that's going to be the huge decision there. Is it DK? Is it Tyler Lockett if he plays, or are you pivoting off him to Moore or to Swain or to someone else there? I think DK needs to have a big game this week, so he's going to be the guy that I'm gonna look for, even if some people are off of him because the fact that Patrick Peterson is probably going to be following him around a lot this week.
Yeah, I like that call, Kevin. Even if, Russell Wilson is still maybe treating Patrick Peterson as an elite cornerback, I think we've seen more than enough examples over the past season and a half that, that really is not the current form of Patrick Peterson, at least in this, post-PED era for him. I think Freddie Swain is someone that with or without Tyler Lockett, if you need to save salary, you can do it. Over the past few weeks, he has 6 targets. Over the past 2 weeks specifically, 6 targets, and David Moore has 9. So I understand, it's not the guy that the passing game is trying to go through first, but, when we are trying to have this single game slate, trying to take down, one of these big tournaments, you gotta get funky sometimes, and it's really hard to find, someone as cheap as Freddie Swain that could be finding the end zone once for you. So I would just say, overall, when you are constructing these rosters, again, we want to be different, we want to be contrarian if we want to try to get that, number 1 spot. We don't want to be making the same lineup that's already been made 20, 30 times. So don't be afraid to leave a bunch of salary on the table. That can be one of the easiest ways to help differentiate your lineup in one of these large field GPPs.
Yeah, one of the ways that people are going to have to figure out with these lineups is ultimately deciding, what quarterback they decide to build around, who ends up having the better game. And that kind of brings us to the conversation about, Russell Wilson coming off, his worst performance of the year. It was atrocious what he was doing. He put on the field last week. He was under pressure all game long. And I'm not worried about him long term. Again, you look at his fantasy points per game, he's still averaging 26.9 fantasy points per game, which is still second best in the league, only behind Kyler Murray. It's actually better than 2018 Patrick Mahomes. So again, Russell Wilson, maybe, he's fallen out of the MVP race, MVP conversations, after turning the ball over a lot over the past couple of weeks. But from fantasy perspective, the guy is still absolutely balling out. You can buy low on him. If their trade deadlines are still available, go get Russell Wilson. I'm not concerned really about it at all. Again, the pressure was there last week, and I don't expect Arizona to bring nearly as much pressure. Again, they rank 23rd in pressure rate since they've lost Chandler Jones, and actually in Corey Peters. He ranks 3rd on the team in pressures, and he was lost for the season in last week's game. So I think Russ is going to get back to cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah, when I'm looking at this week, we're talking about a 30-point implied number for the Seahawks this week. This is just gravy for him right now. This is going to be a good week. And if you're looking for the rest of the season, he's going against, after that, the Eagles, the Giants, the Jets. Now, the concern there is you heard some rumblings from Pete Carroll this week about needing to reestablish balance. The problem is the defense doesn't allow you to do that because they're giving up so many points. And I think this week there can't be balance because you can't win with balance. Now, against the Giants, against the Jets, against the Washington football team that are coming up, maybe there's some chance of that. But I think for Russ, there was some unsustainability with how many touchdowns he was getting early in the season because they weren't getting any rushing touchdowns. That has flipped the other direction, but it can easily flip back. And he's throwing a lot of interceptions, but he's not typically a guy who throws a lot of interceptions. There's been some bad luck and some poor play this year. So I'm definitely on Russ as being one of the top guys. And again, no matter what you want to do in these situations with coaching and with establishing the run, you just can't do it against this Cardinals offense, against the Seattle Seahawks defense.
Yeah, 7 interceptions in the last 4 games, but we've been talking about with Jameis and stuff, like when we're only losing a single point in fantasy land with an interception, that's okay. And honestly, if it means that Russ gets more drives, we'll take them because, even with those interceptions happening, he's been the QB5, QB2, QB7, and then the just awful floor game against the Rams, he was still the QB17. So I think one thing that's kind of been lost with Russell Wilson in this year and just, the discussion, he's cooking, career high 37.1 pass attempts, but we've also seen him more willing to run than we have in recent years, particularly under Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, you don't have to go back too far to find, instances of Russ battling for that lead at the position and total rushing yards. This year, he already has 325 rushing yards in 9 games. I mean, in 2018, he finished at 376. In 2019, 342. So Russell Wilson, by the end of this week, might already have more rushing yards than he did in 2018 or 2019. Because of that, because of the passing game volume, come on, he's still a top 5 fantasy QB week in and week out the rest of the way.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.